That was my first big boy job. I moved to Scotland right out of college to try to play professional rugby. The homework is like, okay, you're going to use this framework that we're teaching you to go have these conversations, and it's amazing. And like people are like, why was I never taught this? I've got young 20-somethings coming out and be like, this is like human school. Like, why was I never taught this?
Like, business is my sport. It's like you're always kind of tinkering and changing up things and seeing what works, and that's what keeps me at least engaged.
I think that's a big change. I think a lot more employers are doing.
This is the Unleash Your Purpose podcast.
Welcome to Unleash Your Purpose. I am your host, Ryan Senters, and I'm super excited to have our first ever author on the show.
All right.
I have Dan Lemoine here, a good friend. We've been in a CEO peer group, a business leaders peer group for about a year.
A little bit over, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'm going to be honest, when I joined this group, it's a bunch of older guys who are business owners, leaders, Christian businessmen, and I was the youngest by a decade and a half.
Yep.
So I was the young buck, and it was like they thought it was cute and a little project for them. And then about 6 months later, you showed up, and I was like, praise the Lord.
Somebody cuter.
Someone cuter that has a much better mustache and is the envy of all of my facial hair, for sure.
Thank you for saying that. To the chagrin of my wife.
Yes.
I'm getting too much positive reinforcement on
I
this.
know. You're like, oh, tell me more. Yes. I mean, how does she feel about the mustache?
She made the mistake of saying it looked cool early on.
Ooh.
And I'm like, it's staying.
Yes. See, the problem with mine is I got to keep it short because my facial hair gets red. And it's not. What
do you got against redheads?
Nothing.
You're gonna get canceled before this thing even
gets going here. After 12 views, you are now canceled. So yes, I got to keep it short because it won't look as stylish.
Well, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So our whole thing is on Unleash Your Purpose, and you are one of the most purpose-driven guys I know. You have a great family. You came over we looked at Christmas lights together with your little girl, and it was the best little Christmas parade you've ever seen.
Yeah, we've been driving through this neighborhood for years for the Christmas lights.
Yeah. We live in a neighborhood. It's really well known. It's like going back to feels like you're in the 1950s where every single house is decorated to the nine. But now this time of the year, it takes me like 30 minutes to get into my neighborhood because everyone's pulling over. And at first it's cute, but then I'm like
5 miles an hour just looking at the Christmas lights.
Yeah, I got to take my kid home from sports. I'm like, I need to get home, Yep. So, but I love it. So, so tell me a little bit about your journey, your story. I know that's a little open-ended question.
Totally, yeah.
You're a business guy, but also a ministry guy, so...
Yeah, so I've been out in Arizona since 2017. What brought us out here, we came from the Caribbean, actually. So we were living in the Dominican Republic, where my wife and I were in full-time ministry. We were running a school called Doulos Discovery School.
Okay.
Pretty cool model, changing the world down there. I had actually left the business world in 2012. Kind of jaded. I was doing like financial turnarounds with businesses, so consulting, I guess you could say,
like private equity
style.
So there was businesses that were really struggling.
Yep.
Your firm would come in, evaluate it,
and help them get into better standing with their banks.
Okay, so they're in workout at the bank.
They're in workout at the bank. There were some opportunities where we would buy the company out of the workout group.
Okay,
if it got to that point, selectively. But for the most part, it was working alongside the business to help them cash flow again, get to a place where they're in healthy.
So you're just kind of a consultant, or you're coming in kind of operating the business?
Both.
Cleaning house.
So most of the time we're working alongside of the founders.
Okay.
Is what we were doing. There were some times where we were like court ordered. We were the restructuring officers or what have you. So from that was my first big boy job. I moved to Scotland right out of college to try to play professional rugby. That didn't work out. No. So that was my first big boy job back in America. And, I think it was great. It was a great experience. But I think like many kind of quarter life crisis, I was just like, what am I doing? Is this really the next 30 years of my life, or 40 years of my career? And so we ended up moving down to the Dominican Republic to do.
Have you noticed I don't know if I feel like I've had a quarter life crisis, and now I'm heading to a midlife crisis, I'm sure, but I feel like there's these predictable moments where you kind of your brain does this aha, or your life does this like, what the heck am I going to be about? Was that kind of it? Or
totally.
You were like, were you striving for just the money and the hustle at that point? Because you're newly married, and then you do this radical and
I was newly married, and I think I'm just, you go from my whole purpose in life is to try to be the best athlete I could to like now sitting at a desk looking at financial models and just being like, is this what life is? And just wrestling through like, yeah, what are you about? Right. Like that's just your 20s in general. You're like kind of out of school and you're just trying to figure out like, how am I going to move through this world? What am I going to be about? Decided I actually wanted to be a chiropractor. Got accepted to chiropractic school, was ready to go there, went on the short-term trip to the Dominican and just felt like God was calling us to maybe audible those plans. So we'd already kind of like cast off the bow lines and we're ready to go somewhere. And so it was kind of an easy, if you will, transition.
So you declined the offer?
That, yeah.
Dude, you and I had the same life. I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do. And after grad school, I was a counselor, doing counseling, and I hated it. I'm a terrible counselor. I mean, I could be empathetic and caring, but if we got to talk about feelings and emotions for more than an hour,
you're like, no,
I'm done. I cannot listen to you complain anymore. So then I was like, I'm going to be a physical therapist. So I got into PT school up in, where was it? Denver. Sarah and I got a place up there. We got a house. She got a teaching job, and then just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And resigned and said, what the heck am I going to do? I moved in with my mom because that's always a good choice. That lasted a few months. And then I ended up falling in and getting involved in a church and started a ministry career there. And I think that was my quarter life crisis too.
I feel like that's like the takeaway there for anybody who might be listening, who's like trying to figure it out, is like, just start moving forward into something. And like, it's probably the first thing you choose isn't going to be the thing that you end up doing, but like that forward momentum, I think God uses to like help pivot you like into what he's wanting. Yeah.
It's like this, you're like this big, huge boulder, and the hardest thing is just getting the rock moving, like push. But once it's moving, you can kind of shift and change directions. But so often I'm like, watch these young guys and who are either on my staff or I'm as a professor at a college, they're just floundering and they're just not doing anything and they're just stuck. Yeah. I'm like, dude, just test drive something to figure it out. Yeah. And then you can kind of change directions and figure it out because that's just floundering. You can flounder till you're 35.
Yeah. Or forever.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you ended up, but how we got acquainted is that you have a business here that you started called Revitalize, and I'm a huge proponent of it. Tell the viewers a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were looking to get back to America. We were in the Dominican Republic. I wanted to get back into the business world. Had the fortunate, I was just fortunate to work alongside of and meet some people that were doing business in a way that I felt was more holistic. They were living kind of undivided lives where like kind of what they were saying they valued, everything was informed by kind of their values, where it wasn't just like, yeah, they're going to be super rich, but they're unhealthy. They have terrible relationships with their kids. Like I'm seeing men and women who are running organizations who are doing it in a way that I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I could see myself back in the business world. Started getting really fired up about that. Had a couple side hustle businesses. So just kind of had my hand in the game there. And my father-in-law actually had a weight loss concept in his spine clinic in Cleveland that my mom had gone through really successfully. I ended up getting my board certification in nutrition and was talking to my father-in-law about, hey, is there a possibility of taking that model and taking it to a bigger market? And frankly, I just don't want to move back to cold Cleveland after living in the Caribbean for 5 years. And so we started Revitalize in 2017. And I've just been really blessed with the growth and what we've seen. And we're just impacting a lot of lives here.
Yeah. And like, just so you know, like I went through Revitalize, and for those of you guys, you guys are bigger in intermittent fasting, and it's a very holistic model of looking at your food, right? And it's like there's a food list that you kind of go through, and Sarah and I went through it together, and I actually dropped 25 pounds. I was like pretty
shredded,
baby.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to see my abs since before COVID. And now I can see 4 at least.
I love it. I'm gonna clip that and use it as a testimonial on the website. I have not been able to see my abs.
Yes,
I haven't been able to see my toes since.
I know. I've got the sugar diabetes, and now
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of multidisciplinary in that, like, we take what I would say is the best of keto, but without the high inflammatory, high saturated fat element, the best of intermittent fasting and figuring out what works for the individual. And every program is customized. Their food list is customized with our technology to, I think for a lot of people, they want to know, like, okay, like, should I be eating the same foods and taking the same supplements as like a postmenopausal woman? Probably not. But it seems like every program is like, here's the generic list.
Yeah.
Here's the generic list of supplements you should take. And so our technology removes some of that guesswork. And
it was like when I went into the first orientation, you put your hand on a
it's called galvanic skin response.
Thank you, please.
Yep.
What's the technical word? Whatever
yeah,
that is.
it measures electrodermal activity. And
and it gave me a whole list of the foods I should eat. And half the foods I have been eating I shouldn't eat. You're like, hey, let's chill out on those for a little bit. Let's rank these other ones up a little bit higher.
Yep.
And then make sure that you're doing the intermittent fasting. Why is intermittent fasting such a valuable thing?
Well, I mean, from just a sheer calorie standpoint, which we're not big on calorie counting, like, you're just restricting your eating window. So naturally you're likely to overconsume calories. But there's a lot of like other benefits from an anti-aging or like cellular health. So your body starts to get rid of like unnecessary things, like it's called autophagy. So basically the body starts to clean its own cells. From a digestive standpoint and hormone regulation, there's a lot of benefits from intermittent fasting.
Because I've been starting to do a lot of research on the fasting. So I started doing when I first started intermittent fasting, doing the 16 hours of not eating was like, it was tough.
Well, yeah, with blood sugar issues too, like that can.
Yeah, so I'm a diabetic, so I have an insulin pump, so I had to get that regulated. But that took a week. But then once I got there, it's like, all right, just getting your body used to it. And now I've probably been doing it for 6-8 months, and I don't even want to start eating until my window begins.
Yeah.
And now I've been even trying to extend it, saying, so now I'm going on like once a week I'll do a 24-hour, and then I've done a 40-hour, and I'm trying to work up to a 72-hour. And I've like seen some research on it that it really helps cancer prevention and all of that.
So that's that autophagy. So like your body will naturally start to eliminate and get rid of things that it doesn't need, cells that are not doing what they need to do, dead cells.
So is it like your body thinks it's in starvation, or you think it's okay, food's not coming in a while?
Your body just gets, I don't think it's starvation as much as your body just gets super efficient, where it's saying like, hey, if we're not getting fuel, we have to go to other things for fuel sources.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So do you recommend people do that periodically, or is that?
I think there's some benefits even of just adding an extra couple hours to your quote fast from sleep. So like if you wake up and you always eat breakfast at 8, try extending to like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
You're going to see some benefits.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading this book about like for so long in our culture, it said breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it maybe not
informed by a lot of the marketers who were sitting
in the dairy farm,
big cereal companies.
Yes. Yeah. I know. Right. I mean, as my kids, you know how much cereal our family goes through?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I got 9 kids. How many I got 5 teen boys. I go through like 4 boxes a day.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And because breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right?
And cereal's just so good.
It is so good.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Breakfast can be important. I mean, it just depends on your activity levels. Like I'm breakfast probably 3-4 days a week, and then I'm fasting on those other couple days.
So you've ended up coming in kind of a little bit more balanced. You could live a normal life.
And that's the point of the program, is like figuring out what works for you, what works for your body, so that you don't have to fear food, and you can say, okay, these are the tools I'm going to use maybe all the time, maybe some of the times, and kind of understand what works for you. And you get to a point where you've removed toxicity, you've removed inflammation, so you're pretty sensitive, and you can feel like, I think I should eat right now. And you can be a little bit more intuitive with it.
And so you're like a guy who's like very knowledgeable in nutrition, and you've written a book on it. I mean, I want to talk like, how in the heck did you write a book? That's like, I have all the dreams, and you already have accomplished the dreams that I want to do. So thanks for that. But you're all into holistic health. And then now you have within our culture, this huge onslaught of the semaglutides. What's your view on that? Yeah,
I mean, you can't really ignore the buzz around these semaglutide. So semaglutide is a peptide under the name Ozempic, is probably the most popular that everybody hears about. It's been around for a long time. Diabetics have been being prescribed this for probably 10 years. Okay. They found that it's really effective for weight loss. In short, because it makes you feel full and it slows down your digestive system. So there's some benefits where you just don't eat as much. So it's an appetite suppressing compound that allows you to just take the shot and you don't eat as much and then you lose weight. There are certainly some downsides to it. One being you're losing a lot of lean muscle mass is what they're finding. It's not as much fat. So it can be some studies show that it's 40% muscle mass, others that it's 60% muscle mass, but you're losing a disproportionate amount of muscle mass compared to just traditional dieting. So that's concerning. Then there's some other side effects, long-term and short-term, that they're starting to see that could be, you might want to avoid. What we're finding is that you can get just as good of results within probably a shorter amount of time with a program like ours. I think it's not the full solution. My take on it is you're not going to inject your way to a healthy diet or out of an unhealthy diet. And if you ever have hopes of coming off this medication, which most folks do, the weight comes back on when you stop, unless you've learned how to eat, what foods are best for you, and taken into account other lifestyle changes that are needed to keep that weight off.
Yeah. Like I mean, there's people at the gyms that we have, and you're like noticing that they're just dropping weight like radically, and they're on the shot, but then their lifestyle has not changed at all, right, and it just rebounds back up.
Right. The FDA also has a pretty sketchy track record of these weight loss drugs over the last 10, 15 years, where you look at the 7 or 8 big weight loss phenomenon drugs that have come out. Not many of them are on the market anymore, because over time the FDA is like, actually, this isn't very healthy for you to do. So we'll see. I think time will tell. We're already seeing in our clinics people who have they've stopped it, they've regained the weight, or they go back to it, and the second round it's not as effective, and so they're like, shoot, like the magic pill, the magic shot isn't really the full solution. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the kind of your sense, jury's still out, but your program, you'll still support it.
Yeah. Yep. So we have a lot of folks who, we see ourselves as a bridge to bringing in that lifestyle component, understanding what foods are best for you, and supporting you while you're on medication like that, and helping you come off of it and not regain the weight.
Yeah. One of the best things I learned from you is like that 80-20 rule, and it's not rocket science, but like do the right things 80% of the time. And it helps me because I'm like a super regimented, disciplined person, and I can just go. But one, it's not realistic for my family. Like, God forbid you guys all want to go out to dinner together, go on a date and have a steak and have a few beers. But now it's like, all right, it's Christmas cookie season. Yeah. And I've just got to get a few cookies in my life. That's my 20%. Yep. But if 80% is solid, then I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. And just knowing like, what are those anchors that you're going to stick to? So like, even in this season, like, we had Christmas cookies, and there's pizza last night at our Bible study thing. And it's like, okay, I know I had a big salad that day. I had a big salad with dinner. So I'm still going to enjoy these things, but like getting my veggies in a day, hitting my hydration goal, my protein goal every day are like my little anchor points. And then there's seasons where you let loose a little bit, and you try not to stack it. So if I'm going to have Christmas cookies at night, I'm not going to go eat a big fat like burrito the next morning. I'm going to like try not to stack 2 losses.
For sure.
Yeah.
But, okay. Yeah, that's good. And so as you guys were kind of launching Revitalize, you launched a book at the same time.
Like, actually, a couple years in, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times it's like, oh, let's launch the book and we'll build a business around it. We already had a very successful practice, and the idea was like, how do we're not, we're premium priced, our coaching packages. It's a very robust program, but how do we get, the basic tenets of our approach to the most people and scale our impact that way? And so that's where
What's it like?
It was a grind, man. It was because
you just like for me, I'm like, how do you get into that grind of just, all right, I'm going to write like 30 pages today?
So we actually, and it was even more difficult with my partner, Dr. Abood. Okay. So you have 2 voices here. Okay. We actually hired a professional writer to essentially help us write it. So she didn't write it. These are all our words, but we basically got on a recorded Zoom call for months, like every week for months. And we transcribed so we outlined the book of what the topics. Then she basically interviewed us, pulled all this information out of us, transcribed it all. And then we put that in the book. Well, now it just looks like a bunch of transcription. So then she went in with us and helped us like, okay, we need to reword this way, because Dan, you just talked for 5 minutes and this is one giant run-on sentence. Let's like rewrite it. Like, let's make you not sound like a fool. And then really helped us both so it sounds like one voice, even though we both wrote it. And so she helped with that. And so that was really, I think, a hack. So in theory, you could take a lot of the podcast interviews, or you could just transcribe your thoughts and then start kind of cutting and pasting and moving it around and get a 80% of the way there of a manuscript and then go to somebody who actually knows.
Do you sell, like I've seen like self-publishing? Did you go traditional publishing? How did you guys go about doing that?
So we have a publisher, but the arrangement we have with them is we own all the royalties.
Okay.
So they helped us bring it to market. And so we paid them on the front end for us to have all the royalties on the back end versus them paying us, and then they keep all the royalties downstream.
Okay.
Yep.
So like for a revenue stream kind of from your, like a pie chart, would this be like a heavy hitter for you guys or a more just kind of auxiliary?
Yeah, it's a credibility builder.
Okay.
From a financial perspective, it doesn't really move the needle too much for us, given the size of our business. But it's a credibility builder, and it's a very expensive business card.
Yes. Yes. Oh, hello.
Yes. I wrote a book.
I know. Like I haven't written a book, and I have like 9 books in my head that I want to do.
What are the top 3?
Top 3. One is the passion project is I want to tell short stories that are encouraging, like a short little devotional, kind of like, have you read Love Does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like a Bob Goff.
Yeah.
Like these ridiculous things that happen. What?
Yeah.
Well, invite him over.
Yeah. Let's get Bob on the podcast.
Yes. Bob, if you're listening, I want you here.
Also, marriage hack is read that book together out loud.
Oh, it's so great.
So great.
Yeah, that's actually one of the first books I think Sarah and I did together. And we did it as a small group thereafter. They're so funny, quick, and super inspiring little stories at the end.
So good.
I love that.
All right, so Love Does top style.
That's a good one. Probably helping unleash your purpose. So turn this whole kind of concept into a book about helping, especially for me, what I feel uniquely passionate about is helping like millennials, Gen Z, figure out their purpose and to take action. I think so much of society currently right now is so young people are so scared and timid and not just addicted to this, but this has become their security blanket that they really, it is, I mean, the jury's out of what's going to happen. Phone technology. They never, like even dating, like how they even communicate. They'll be texting each other and DMing, and then all of a sudden they'll ghost the person, and that's how they break up. They're so conflict adverse. They won't have difficult conversations that it's very, very difficult for these young people to
move
kind of
through life.
Yeah.
We found in our business, one of the best things we've done is at like when you on our new staff training is we have a full like accountability, how to have hard conversations training for all of our staff. And they're like, this blew my mind. They're like, what is
it like?
It's like, okay, how do you have a hard conversation?
Is it hard conversations with a client, with another?
We do it with like, we're training we're training on the frameworks, and then we actually, part of their homework is like, what's a hard conversation you're putting off in your life? And usually it's with my boyfriend about the amount he's drinking, or my roommate and they don't clean up, blah blah blah. And then the homework is like, okay, you're going to use this framework that we're teaching you to go have these conversations. And it's amazing. And like people are like, why was I never taught this? I've got young 20-somethings coming out and being like, this is like human school. Like, why was I never taught this?
Yeah, it's these human skills. It's like not even just social skills, but just human skills that people need to learn. Like, just be able to, like, sometimes it's just like, hey, I was talking to my one son yesterday, having a hard conversation, and I'm like, hey buddy, this is gonna be a little bit uncomfortable, but hey, you're not in trouble. Okay. Or like, hey, can I talk to you? And I, even with one of our nanny, and it's like, hey, do you mind if we talk to you? Am I in trouble? Like, no. Right. But it's like just teaching these skills for a 30-something-year-old to be able to have it.
Totally.
So in that framework, is it like to me, to have the hard conversations, always to first like talk about the elephant in the room. Hey, this may not be an easy conversation, or this may be a little bit uncomfortable, or hey, I'm actually a little uncomfortable sharing this with you, but I just got to share something from my heart. Yeah. What's your guys' framework on how to do that?
That's right on. I mean, I think that we say like 80% of the work happens before you ever have the conversation. Yeah. So like thinking through like what is really at the root of, if I'm, with the nanny, if it's this or that thing, is like, is it really that thing, or is there something deeper, or unbundling? A lot of times it's a lot of things, and you have to spend some time thinking about like unbundle all of the things I'm frustrated with to get to the root issue. And it's like, it's not that you didn't load the thing the right way or you didn't clean up this. It's that I've asked you this multiple times and it doesn't seem like, is there something that I'm doing that's not communicating right? So it's really trying to like set yourself up for success before you even go into that conversation. And then kind of what you just mentioned is like, how do you maintain a level of safety, set a tone of safety that's not punishment first tone, because everybody immediately, the fight or flight goes on, especially with like traumatized kids. Like they're immediately going to think I'm in trouble, and then their brain just starts to shut down. So how can you get into that conversation, keep safety if things start to devolve into a place where it's getting messy? How do you kind of step back and reestablish safety to be like, oh, I think what I'm not saying is that you're in trouble. What I am saying is that sometimes when you don't do this or you do that, it makes me feel this way, or I feel disrespected, or what have you. Like, to being able to see that the conversation is not going where it is and be able to pull back and reestablish safety is a big piece. Yeah.
So when you're thinking the word safety, you're kind of thinking, hey, to make sure this person is not feeling so dysregulated, feeling uncomfortable, because a lot of times when you're having a hard conversation, the person delivering it is equally as anxious, and charged up. Oh yeah. So you have to like pull yourself back. Like I love one of his Jocko's books. He has this whole lesson on detachment. So you have to detach from the situation, like remove yourself fully, like almost like you're watching from there, like from afar away, and you're looking down on it. So you picture yourself like having that conversation, because you're not so like, when my emotions are connected to it, I'm an ass.
Yeah, totally.
I don't handle it with grace. I'm not clear because I'm in my feelings and emotions. So you're kind of saying when you're talking to your staff, it's having moments of prepare, address the elephant in the room pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think because like if you try to be like, hey, so how's your day? And it's like they're just thinking in the back of their mind, like, why is he in my office? What's going on? Like, he never comes and talks to me, or like something's up. Like, you just get in and be like, hey, I would love to chat. Here's what I would love to chat about. It's not, nothing's crazy, but like there's something that I want to address.
Can I give you some feedback on this?
Yeah, something like that. Exactly.
Yeah. And you have to be calm for that. And I think the only way it works is if you have what makes it the most effective, I would say, is that the leader in that space has to have some semblance of relationship. Like when you're talking about safety, like if I never talk to this, like I have an accounting team, so I have like 4 or 5 people on the accounting team. I don't naturally talk to the accountants very much. Like I'm the big personality, the CEO in the office. They're naturally pretty timid. So they're always pretty intimidated by me. And I don't ever want that. So I have to intentionally try to go in there, make conversations, be relational. So if there was ever a time to have a difficult conversation, it's not like, he only talks to me when he's mad. Or anytime he does talk to me, it's something, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, like have you built that relational trust that they know your heart and totally.
Yes.
And then understanding, we call it like CPR, which I think might have been from the book, Crucial Conversations or Crucial Accountability. But it's like, is this content related? Is this like a one-off thing where it's like, hey, you didn't pick up your room after I asked? Or is it becoming a pattern? So P. So it's like, hey, I've asked, like, it seems like I'm asking every week for your room to be cleaned up because it really stresses mom out. And it seems like there's a pattern. Like, is it just because you're forgetting? Like let's get to the root together of why this isn't happening, because ultimately it gets to a point of where the relationship is starting to suffer. So that's the R part of it, where it's like, okay, we've talked about this multiple times. It's been a pattern. Now I'm just not sure if I can trust you anymore, because there's this pattern of like, you continue to not do this. So like,
that's so good.
So now it's really affecting our relationship, because like, I want to be able to give you more responsibilities or ask you to do other stuff with us as a family or be part of this family. But it doesn't seem like you're able to do that. And I'm not sure I can trust you to, fill in the blank. And so there's like, that's a helpful framework. My wife built a whole training about it. She gets asked to speak on it and train churches and organizations and stuff. So,
but you've taught it enough that you can claim it as your own.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah.
But no, this is like probably one of the most critical the skills that as business owners and leaders that we have to do is train in these human skills to have hard conversations, to be able to be empathetic. It sounds like in this CPR is like even if you're not super comfortable, but it's building that trust and that relationship together.
Because what's going to derail you from unleashing your purpose is like, especially when you're young, you get into something, you're so excited about it, you got the rosy colored glasses, and then all of a sudden it's hard. Or there's somebody in your work or in your life that's making it more difficult, and have a tool set to be able to navigate that, not bail. So you don't just ghost your purpose, right? And be like, oh, well, because I've seen that all the time. It's like, I've got people in my life where it's like, they got a new thing every year where they're like all about this. And then, oh, well, my boss, whatever, or this thing. And they just let these other things kind of derail them. And then they're just being blown by the wind, it seems like.
That's good. As you said, unleash your purpose, I was like, as I've been kind of going through this and having these conversations, like when I think about purpose, there's like, sometimes there's these moments that are hyper focused of like, hey, I'm called to this thing. But there's also this thing generally in life that I have this general vision for my life, this kind of direction. Where do you kind of land on that? When you think of Dan, think of how does business, family, faith, all of that kind of come together? And when you think of purpose and what is significant for that? Yeah.
And this is something I think I've thought a lot about and mapped out. And I think the common theme for me is that there is no common theme. Like I've tried to be a professional athlete unsuccessfully, but got close-ish. An author, a business owner, a nonprofit leader. And so I think, I've sold crab cakes at one point in my life. Like there's just a lot of things trying to figure it out. And I think what I've realized, for me at least, is that there's not this one thing. I think there's this, like, the purpose is like, how do I be a blessing to others? How can I be a force for helping humans flourish? And I could do that, as a janitor. I could do that as a business leader. Like, I think it takes a little bit of imagination and awakening your imagination, because I think there's a lot of particularly young people who think like, oh, my purpose has to be this thing I'm so passionate about. It's like, well, I also think you can learn how to bring your passion to whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. And to kind of broaden their ideas of, somebody's idea about what is purpose, what is passion. It's like, well, you can find ways to apply that in a variety of situations, because it hasn't really been until the last however many years that we've even have the privilege to even be thinking about this.
Exactly.
But people were happier probably, being like, but it's like, my 4 generations of bread makers, and guess what I'm going to be doing? Because our little town needs another bread maker. I'm going to be a bread maker, and they can figure out a way to be passionate about that and find purpose in that, even though they didn't really have
and
any
it's like
choices.
almost like I'm almost coming to terms with like sometimes purpose can be synonymous with contentment. Like not just contentment like just for yourself, hey, I'm just fine being mediocre, but in the hustle, I always was like big into like, you gotta hustle, you gotta grind. I mean, I did my dissertation on grit and continue to push through hard things no matter what, and I'm a pusher. But there is this other side of the coin of finding like grace in being content in your circumstances, embracing what's in front of you, being present to the right now versus always wishing for the next.
Yeah, well, when you figure that out, I would love to know, because when I started seeing a counselor a number of years ago, it's been amazing to just help me have more emotional resiliency and emotional language to be a better husband and father and all of the fun things, better leader. But my biggest concern going to a counselor was like, yes, I want more contentment. Yeah. But I also don't want to be complacent. And so how can I like be content with where I'm at and with the station that God has me, and just being like, and I haven't figured it out yet, but I still want to push. I still want to have resiliency and endurance and perseverance. And I want to have goals and I want to pursue those things, because that's part of the fun. But like, I want to do it with a spirit that's just like, I'm here for the ride. And the best I can think of is when I was trying to be a professional athlete and I was playing rugby at the highest level I could, there were just these times where it was like I could play rugby in a way that was like, I just felt like I was expressing myself on the field. That sounds a little woo-woo, but I just felt like I was in the flow. And I was just doing what I was designed to do. And then there was other times where it was like, I was so anxious about performing and beating somebody else out for a spot, or it just wasn't fun anymore. It's like, how do I unlock those times where it was like, the stakes are low, you're new on this team, they don't know you, there's only one place to go, which is up, and I could just play my freest rugby.
Do you feel like when you got in your head when you're playing professional rugby, is it when you were like at an elite level and you had to hold your position, and then it was always like looking over your shoulder and like
Yep.
I need to sustain it. And it was like the comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like my first game and my last game for this team in Scotland were my best games. Because the first game, they don't know me. They just think I'm some Yankee who doesn't know how to play rugby, and I'm just out there playing.
Dominating.
Yeah, and then the last game, it's like I'm moving back to America in 2 weeks. Like I'm never gonna see these guys again. So whatever. And I just played out of my mind. And so like that, and that, as I was looking back, like that was kind of true of like all the teams I've ever played for. And it's like, but once you win that starting spot, there's like this pressure to perform, or like, and it's like and it's all head trash. It's all head trash.
Yeah, and it's like and I think even in business, especially like there's always like, okay, I get to this level of, oh wow, there's not many people that have 500 employees. Oh wow, we're at 25 million, we're at 30 million. Like, oh wow, I'm looking pretty big. But no, then there's the bigger guy next to me, and it's always like, well, oh wait,
totally.
And it's just constantly. The comparison, man.
Yeah, like if my 25-year-old self was talking to my 37-year-old self, he'd be like, "Are you kidding, dude?
You got the best life in the world. You got a beautiful wife, a great house.
Totally.
You know, I mean, you're happy. You do all the things. But but there's always there's this and I like it. There's this hunger and this tenacity and this relentless pursuit for more. Not for more of just for sake, but maybe I'm just always like a little bit hungry, and maybe that's like the athlete or the high D in like my disc assessment or whatever it is. But I'm like, then there has to be this flex where I'm like, all right, I got to be content in what I got to, and I don't want to be like contentment. Also can feel like lazy.
Totally.
And I'm like, dude, I can't. And I just think that's a dirty word, lazy. Ugh. Like that feels dirty and late, and like. That's part of my own therapy. I'm like, I always used to, my therapist knew that was like a big part for me. As like, I had this dirty word that I can't do that. So maybe now I'm trying to force myself to embrace the contentment that I don't have to be busy all the time. And doing the next thing. Yeah,
I think about like when I was in the Dominican, we were in the Dominican Republic for 5 years. About year 3, I had a pretty clear, like, I wanted to be back in the business world. I was excited. I felt like God was calling me back to the business world. Danae was running our school, 80 staff members, 400 kids. And she's like, I just don't feel like the work's done yet. And I submitted to that. I'm like, you know what? I think you're right. Like I'm just anxious to get going and get restarted. But there was this like 2-year period where I feel like I missed out. Like looking back, I was like trying to network and work with people in the States and do all this stuff. And I just missed out on those opportunities to like go play with my little high school kids basketball after school, because I was like moonlighting for this other organization in the States that, maybe would hire me after we moved back. And I was just so
on to the next.
Yeah. On to the next. Mind was on the next. I got to set myself, I got to hustle. I got to grind. And I just missed these beautiful moments of living in paradise. With wonderful people. And there was about 24 months where I'm just like, dude, I left a lot on the table because I was so worried about what's next. And I think if I could talk to myself then, or if God would talk to me, he'd be like, dude, it's all going to work out. Like, I put you here for a purpose right now. Just enjoy it.
Yeah. It's so like, I don't know how to figure that out. I'm about to be 40. And I feel like up to this point, I usually would go through a new job. I was like a 3 to 5 year guy.
Pretty typical, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And with my main company, Ohana, we're on year 9, and now it's taken new iterations, and I've gotten to do other things, and I've started to figure out like, okay, I'm creative. I like to produce that part. So as long as I can express that in a different way, then I'm good. But I'm always like I have been a serial entrepreneur, and I think I've always had this indigestion of the newness, and it's a bloodsucker.
That is one of the best things about entrepreneurship, though, is like if you're trying to find your purpose, like entrepreneurship and having your own business is like the best laboratory for try. If you have a job and you're like, oh, I think I might be more creative. It's like, well, your boss just wants you to do what what your role is.
Yeah, I'm not a W-2 guy.
Yeah, and so I think if you have the stomach for it, it's definitely, I think, better. So
what's next? You're in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really seeing where this goes, continue to see where this goes. I don't know, a mentor of mine is like, is this the book you're writing? Before we wrote the book, but is Revitalize the book you're writing with your career, or is this just a chapter? And I think it's probably a chapter. I could see myself being involved in other other endeavors down the road, but
yeah,
we'll see.
You squeeze the juice out of it. You're doing a lot of good with people, and then kind of see what's.
Yeah, there are definitely days where it's hard, and you're like, man, I could see myself not doing this. But then when you really think about it, or you have opportunities, you talk to somebody who's interested in buying a business or something like that. We've entertained a few of those conversations lightly over the years. And then you start to think, you're like, but this is like a huge part of my life. Like I wouldn't get to go in and see like my friends at work, like they wouldn't be there anymore. And like, as much as you think that they'd still be your friends, like they,
like I had a private equity firm come to us a couple years back, and I was like, interesting. Wow, that's a big number. But then I'm like, what would I do? This is my life, my ministry. But like some other business, I'm like, hey, come on over.
Totally.
I am available.
Yeah. And it's like, what are you optimizing for? Like, so yeah, it's easy to just be like, oh man, the grind of the day. I'm just tired. Like, I just love to just have something else, something different, but that would have its own issues.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I optimizing for? Am I optimizing for just a number in the bank account, or like going back to why I got back into the business world to begin with, which was like, how do we create workplaces that are actually transformational and not like, most workplaces are, max extraction formulas where it's like the employee shows up saying, how do I get the most out of them? And the employer says, how do I pay them the least and get the most out of them? How do we like make it into max contribution relationship where it's like, we're just trying to outgive each other, employees and employers. And I don't think I've unlocked that yet. So I think there's still work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We both have a good amount of employees, complicated businesses, marketing, sales. What would you say, and I'll share my thoughts too, the hardest change you've seen in business in the last like 5 years? Because I feel like it's different.
Yeah, it definitely feels different.
The last post-COVID, the sluggish economy, workforce, I don't know. I don't know if it's sometimes more tiring and things aren't as easy, but like.
How many years into this are you?
With Ohana? 8. Yeah.
So we're in year 7.
Okay.
I kind of think I go back to sports. Like sports have this beautiful, like you have an off season where you're recovering, you're reskilling. And I feel like at least in my business, it just doesn't feel like there's an off season. It just feels like the work just continues to come at you all the time. And I know my employees feel that. I feel that. And so it's like, I don't know. I haven't figured it out, but like, how do you build in more rhythms of rest into, and maybe you just say, hey, we're going to shut down for a week and just not make money, but knowing long-term it keeps people engaged. But so I think that, I don't know if that's like, has work changed or if just like my energy over the last 7 years has just, gotten, I'm just not as young as I was or whatever. I don't know if there's something in that.
Like one of the best things we've done for our staff and staff engagement this year is we experiment that 4-day work week. It was very well, we asked people like better benefits, but I kept reading all these different studies from Europe and here saying, hey, productivity didn't go down. So we said, all right, over the summer, we'll do a 4-day work week. We did 4/9. So we gave people 4 bonus hours. So you got to get your workload done in 36 hours. So you get a 3-day weekend. I mean, I'm paying you for 40 but you only got to work 36. And what we've found is like, if we took this away, and that was the risk, if we went back to the 5s, 5/8, they would revolt because they love it. They love like having a little bit more margin to take a breath. It feels like when we don't necessarily have the resources to give big, huge raises, this is a tangible thing, and we haven't seen the productivity go down. So for me, it's like maybe it's this tension that we're watching with. Like we have to learn how to compete in the workplace now, and that's been a very effective tool. And I liked it. I've been pretty fearful because I'm like the hustler. What are we gonna do on Fridays? No, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna film a podcast. I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna go on a date with my wife. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's like
I think that's a big change. I think a lot more employers are doing that type of stuff or allowing people to work from home. We're more of a retail style business where it's like we're open 6 days a week. We have clients or members coming in for check-ins, and so we have to have that availability to serve our customers, if you will. And so it's like I'm like, I don't know how that would even work for us. But I think we're now competing with like, well, my sister gets paid $35 an hour and she works at home, or like, you know, there's these things where it's like,
okay.
I like
that's not what we do.
All right. And it's just hard. So I think we're having to think through like, what does the next 5 years look like for us from that standpoint? Like, can we still serve people in person, but also more virtually and things like that, that would allow for our employees to.
Yeah. And that's what kind of makes like business is my sport. It's like, you're always kind of tinkering and changing up things and seeing what works. And that's what keeps me at least engaged. Cause I need if it just gets mundane, then the creativity stops, and I'm just like, oh, I'm dying here.
Yeah. Well, and I think also too, like just in the game of business, like you're building your thing, and it's like, it's amazing, and seeing the growth is amazing, and adding people to the team is amazing. But then there's like a little bit of added stress of like, well, now the nut that I have to crack, like the amount of money that goes out every month, whether the revenue comes in or not, like it's going out, right? Like, so I've got to make payroll. So if you have a couple down months, like there's just those where it's like, when it was just me, Dr. Bood, my wife, and employee number one. Yeah. It was, we were just hustling, and we were, margins were, and so you're just, the game has changed a little bit, and I'm just maturing as a business. Yeah.
And you got to make sure that you, like, now I got 500 something employees, and you're like, okay, payroll $700,000 this week for 2 weeks. I'm like, you got to make sure that you got the nut to crack.
Yeah.
And then as the numbers get bigger, I love taking risks, but the risks have to become more calculated.
Yeah.
So for me, we're looking at another big project and a big facility that would be very innovative. And as we're going out to the site and checking things out, I'm like, the nut on this to just cash flow is high. And like the risk reward, okay, how long can I sustain those losses before we're end up like, luckily, I have a decent enough business where we can look at these innovative things and carry a loss for a short time, but it comes more risky, honestly.
Yeah, it's like, how do you take like non-fatal risks where it's like, if that fails, it's not going to undermine the mothership. Yeah, and I kind of think back to that analogy of like those first games on a rugby team. I could just be. It was like when we were starting up. It's like, we're nobody here. Like nobody knows us from Adam. So it's all just gravy. Like if we're winning like a new member, it's like, we're just high-fiving. And now it's like, oh my gosh, like, well, if we don't see this number of people come in, like what's going to happen? And there's just like, it's like, we're afraid to lose it. Like I slip into that head trash instead of being like, okay, how do I just play this? Like the game's already won, it's all going to work out.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Dude, this is so good. We got in a whole different direction than I thought.
Total riff. Yeah. When are you going to write? What's the third book?
Okay. Yeah. So my Love Does book, my Unleash Your Purpose, which I'm still kind of working through what the heck that even means. The third one would be
what better way to figure out than writing it?
Ooh, nice challenge. All right. I'll have to think about that. And number 3 would be I developed a attachment trauma approach for working with kids in foster care. So I would want to write a book on that approach. We call it the Ohana approach. It's great.
Yeah.
It's really good. We train all our staff in it. I think it's innovative, and would love to get it peer reviewed. So that's like my psychologist brain.
Yeah.
So it just now is kind of taking those baby steps forward. And
yeah, I mean, you don't have anything. You don't have anything on your plate, really.
No, I know.
Like 11 kids and
exactly. And
9 kids or 11 kids?
I have 11 kids. 9 live here. So yeah, and a grandchild.
So how do you keep all the balls in here? Like what would you say your purpose is, and where do all these elements of your life fit into that?
Of all the things I do?
Yeah. Just like I from the outside, I'm like, dude, this guy Ryan he's got a flourishing business. He's buying a little side hustle businesses. He's got 11 kids. He's changing the world. Like he's got a happy family. Like,
yeah, I think for me, I've had to come to terms with, I want my life to be fully integrated. So it sounds like a really big life, but the people that I do life with, like the people I work with, are my best friends, that are aunts and uncles to my kids. We're on mission together. We're like this extended family on mission together, and to create this family that's all kind of working towards a common purpose.
That's a very vulnerable place to be. Is it not? Like to just be like, I feel like I shy away from that, and I
like being like
that integrated with like my staff or with other people in my life where it's just like, like
I'm very
if I truly
selective.
let you in, you could hurt me, you know?
Yeah. And I have been hurt.
Right.
Like there's been a couple
that
people that, I love very much and got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly, through that has wounded me that I've now almost like a little more guarded. And I have like circles, like spheres of circles of trust of people. And my inner circle of people who deeply know me that I can be vulnerable with and real has gotten smaller through the years. And that's okay. Like so that circle is tighter. And I think they're like the warriors that we do life together, day in, day out, vacation together. And they help protect the outer rings. Those people are welcome in too, but just not as frequently, I guess. And like my purpose is like helping like redeem kids' stories. So I'm coming more and more terms that my legacy is the kids I'm called to disciple are in my home, and I have to do that really well and help them like become great entrepreneurs, become men and women of God. My prayer is that the next CEO of Ohana is my daughter, first female CEO of Ohana. That'd be amazing.
Cool. Yeah,
you know, cool. And pray that over her, and I mean whatever she wants. But like those are the things. So like I'm saying no to a lot more things now.
There's this concept called we've heard about it if you've read the Bible, like this idea of the birthright. You know, it's like you're the firstborn, like these things are being passed down to you and this is your birthright. But we operate typically here in the Western world as like a death right. So basically like your parents die and then just hand you this box that you've never been exposed to of like assets or business that you don't know how to run. You don't know how to manage this stuff. And we do a pretty poor job, generally speaking, of like inviting our kids at appropriate levels throughout their childhood and adolescence into like understanding how the household works, how the business works, how our assets work. And my CFO, Mike, he's in his 70s. And it's like he has kids in their 30s and 40s, and they've got access to all the bank accounts. They know that if him and his wife died tomorrow, they know exactly how to take over his business, what they would do to what they would wind down, what they would keep going. Like they have a full game plan, and they do an annual like review, like, you know, board type review every year. And I'm just like, that's just so amazing. Cause like, I think if my parents pass away, I know they have a will and stuff, but like, I don't really know what they have. I don't know where the passwords are.
Right.
Like, I don't have, you know, or you know, for a lot of people, it's like, they're not educating their kids on financial stewardship. So if they just get handed all of these assets, they don't know how to steward them well. And I think that's just beautiful to think through. Like, yeah, my daughter might run Ohana. So like that discipleship has to start early.
Yeah.
Right?
And now, I'm unwinding some businesses right now, but as I'm unwinding, I'm winding up other ideas. And the number one idea, honestly, is a business that our family can do together, that my kids can be involved in, that they're helping do sales. They have a call, a purpose, that we have to work hard together. Yeah. I mean, I've thought as simple as like, hey, we'll start a thrift store and the benefits go to Ohana, or a little online virtual thing. I mean, whatever, but I need to teach them these skills. And like, and this is discipleship. This to me is like mentorship and training up your kids along the way.
Totally.
Because my kids, like, these are the skills they're going to need to know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I even told Sarah, I'm like, hey, by junior year, we may just need to homeschool our kids. And then the last 2 years, they're just going to do an apprenticeship. We'll get them through their basics, but apprenticeship with me, get them in the day in, day out of business life, so they can kind of get reps. That's why like
an intentional gap year would be like such a not just a go and party your face off gap year, but like intentional gap year before college. Like I think I think I could have benefited from something like that. Yeah. I was reading this book, The Intentional Father. You're on my list of people to buy it.
That's
for.
Good.
Have you
read
it?
Mark Patterson? No. I've read it.
I don't know.
John Tyson.
Yeah,
super
great.
Good.
He was talking about how he was like, why are some of these kids, when he was in college ministry, he's like, why are some of these young men and women like really adjusting well to being adult on their own, and some aren't? And it's like the ones that were, he was like, they were all Mormon. And so he was like, I got to talk to these Mormon leaders. Yep. I'm like, why is that? And it's because they have like curriculum they're doing every morning through their high school and so they're learning the doctrine, they're learning the Bible, their Bible and all of that. But then they also go on mission for 2 years where they have this intentional experience away from mom and dad. They're being poured into, and it's like, how do we reverse engineer that to,
that book honestly helped me. So much of my life has been, and as a business leader and as a dad, accidental versus intentional. So it's shifting my mindset, and you have to shift your mindset from just accidentally floating through life to intentionally driving through it, from accidental to intentional. And when he was talking about those core values in that book, so now every single Sunday, our kids, we have family breakfast. We'll make pancakes and whatever else, and we do one of our Centers core values. We have a little thing printed off, and it's Centers have Ohana love. So what does it mean to have Ohana love? Okay, it means in order for us to love others, we got to make sure there's love in this room, that we're not hitting each other and mocking each other. What does it mean to share each other's burden? So we talk about each core value, and I'm like, and that was a simple thing, and it was so awkward at first because
yeah, totally.
And now they're like, that's not Ohana love. That's not Ohana love. I'm like, yes. You know what? It can be awkward and cheesy, but that's all right. Because then they're saying it, and it's intentional. It's just the stupid things that are not stupid, actually. That are intentionally getting into your kids. And I'm like, that's a good book, man.
That is a great book.
Now we're going into a little bit of a rest season for a week or two, and I have 3 books on tap, and I'm like, oh, so excited for that.
What are they?
I knew you were gonna ask me that. One's on this extended family on mission. Other one is C.S. Lewis book. Which one? The short read about the devil.
Screw Tape Letters?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the other one.
Okay.
Oh, the one more.
Fear No Food.
Huh?
Fear No Food.
Fear No Food. I've read this book, and I do endorse it. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. Did you know that?
Yeah, I hit it twice. I do know that.
Yes. I have given myself a rating at least once, and I've given it a 5-star. All right, my last question I always ask every guest before they come is this. When you die, what do you want to be remembered for?
I think I would like to be remembered for just how I loved my family well.
It's good.
Yeah. I think the rest of it, when I come back to that kind of discipleship bit, it's or in the C12 group, it's what's your social impact? And it's I really do feel what's my household? My household is my wife, my kids, my employees, those people that God's asked me to care for and be a blessing to. I hope that I've done that well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man, for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll do it again very soon. All right, guys. Until next week, unleash your purpose to profit in business, faith, and life. See you then.
Thanks for joining us for the Unleash Your Purpose podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and leave a review. We'll see you next week.